Welcome to Santaroga Surplus. We are doing part 2 of the SIG Sauer P320 gunsmithing or home building or whatever series, okay? In the first video, which was mostly an introduction, we talked about the parts and the components and how you can take this and swap out the receiver unit. This is a blank, and turn it into this or a different size. All the slides are interchangeable, all the grip frames are interchangeable. Now we're going to get into some details with an overview of the JSD Supply produced 80% completion jig, which is also a good gunsmithing tool in general. The MUP-1 Modular Universal Pistol 1 frames that they make. And we'll do a disassembly and reassembly of a completed MUP-1. So, once again, YouTube does not allow you to talk about how to build a firearm, so we're not going to go through any processes of actually doing that. One thing I would like to make a note on, if you are doing projects where you want to have a complete separate grip frame, barrel slide, everything as a separate spare backup, or you're building a receiver, is that this, your takedown latch pin, does not come with a caliber exchange kit, and you will have to order those separately. Moving on. This one doesn't have a latch pin in it at the moment. Excuse any whining noises you hear in the background. We have a new litter of golden retriever puppies. And they are whelping in the shop right now. Or rather, the whelping box is in the shop. This is a compact frame, grip frame. This is the firearm frame. Now this is one that I made in the shop, and this is a commercial one. There are some subtle differences that I would like to talk about. The length of the slide rails on the front is longer on the shop-made one, the MUP, the JSD Supply Modular Universal Pistol, MUP. I'm going to call them MUP-1s. And I still have a little bit I could do to actually pull down the edges on the front and just make it a little bit smoother. The width of the metal is slightly different. This is very slightly thicker. It doesn't seem to make any difference or be any thicker in the significantly critical areas. However, on the bottom, with this lug that goes into the back of the grip frame, it is just a little bit thicker, and you might want to consider filing, rounding your edges a little bit and trimming this in until it fits properly. The grip frame is plastic and it'll work either way, but it's a little bit easier if you do that. That includes these tabs right here. I'll get it apart and I'll show you that. Well, no, I'll show you right now. The tabs on the MUP are a little bit more squared off and could use a little bit of finishing compared to the tabs, that's these parts right here, on the production receiver unit. Everything else is pretty good. Everything else works very well. When you get the jig, okay, you get a set of drill bits with it. You have a number 39, a number 40, a number 32, a number 22, a 7/32, and a 9mm bit. They are all pretty much Chinese production steel bits, and you may, especially if you are going to do more than one of these, want to get some carbide bits, at least for the number 39, number 40, and probably number 32. The number 22 is an easy one to pilot if the drill bit is a little bit dull with a different size, but yeah, I would maybe get a number 22 in carbide. Once you get to the, oh, there's also a number 9, I'm sorry. That's something that keeps getting me because there's a number 9 and the 9mm. With the 7/32, the number 9, and the 9mm, the expense of a carbide bit starts to get extreme because there's just the sheer quantity of metal in. A good 9mm carbide bit can be $50 or $60 on its own. The jig is also useful for checking the dimensions and dimensionality and accuracy of a unit that you may pick up use. We'll disassemble one and put it in there and check it out. 4 screws hold it together. When you put it in, you have to make sure that the receiver unit, the MUP, goes under these little ridges here, a little lip right there. That's pretty much it. You're going to have this in and clamped in good, because that will help hold this in place during any process of working, repairing, or drilling that you might be doing. This has a curved section on the side, and that is to assist you in beginning the bends if you have an unbent slide rail piece like the MUP-1. This is also a very useful piece for helping to straighten out if you end up taking your receiver unit and just getting it bent or twisted during working on it. To disassemble a SIG Sauer P320, we've already gone through the basic field stripping where you get the slide off, pull this latch out, pull this out of the grip frame. The barrel and slide assembly, well, rather, the barrel doesn't have any disassembly, but the slide disassembly we'll cover also in another video. The actual receiver unit, if you want to replace the trigger bar, which is a very common thing, this is the first step of a disassembly process. So replacing the trigger bar is, of course, the most common thing that people would want to do because there are custom triggers and trigger bars available. The first thing you're going to do is pull it down a little bit, pull it out a little bit, okay? And then it's going to come back here and rotate the trigger all the way back. If you pull the trigger out, once it's rotated all the way back, this will be free, and then you can kind of just wiggle it around, and it'll come upside down, and you'll be able to get your trigger bar spring out without pliers, because you don't want to bend this. This is it's amazing that SIG Sauer came up with a brand new design and still managed to have this one weak point in the design. I've had this problem with SIG Sauer P229s and 226s before. There's a spring shaped similar to this that is your trigger bar return spring and gives you your double action pull when you've decocked the hammer. And if it gets bent, it just doesn't work right. So this is the right shape, and if it gets bent so that it's not approximately 90 degrees, you're going to have problems with it. And once again, to specify, the trigger slides in and out at this full forward position, and then it's locked in once you start rotating. This is not very difficult. The next thing that I would do is take out the slide lock lever, and that's this pin right here, which is very easy to get out. Start pushing it. You want to hold on to the slide lock because there's a spring, and that's your spring and pin right there. It sticks in very well because of the grease, but that is what it is, and it's not going to go flying, but it can drop. You are 1/3 of the way there. The next part I would do, so in some production series, this pin right here, where you take out your takedown safety lever, this pin is going to be staked so it does not come out. You'll have to unstake it. People talk about restaking it and everything. There's no reason. This pin is just fine the way it is. Just pull it out. It's not a problem. Pretty much all of your pins are going to go in from the left, so this is not that hard to deal with. Once this pin is out, you're going to pull this back some, and this is kind of tweaky. You got to pull it back some and get it out. It's going to go sideways. You're going to get it out of this little channel, get it sideways. At that point, you can pull it out. This is your spring. This right here is the spring that the takedown safety rides in. or pushes against. It rides in that channel. Okay? When you put it back together, you're going to have to know that that is there. There you go. The next thing that's going to come out is basically the whole sear unit, but in pieces. So first you have the top pin, okay? And I'm starting to lose terminology here because I know that these things all have names, but we're starting to lose it. This top pin is a little bit tight on this one because this is the MUP-1 that I built. And the drill bits, Chinese drill bits aren't always sized perfectly. But there it is. That allows your sear to come out. That literally holds your sear in place, okay? But I'm not going to drop it out yet because I'm just going to pull the larger pin, which holds, everything will just fall out. And this is your disconnector, this is your sear. So, disconnector, sear. The sear has 2 springs on the back, and they tend to stay on pretty well, but you can lose them, so be a little bit careful. And then this is loose in here, okay, along with the disconnector release. And it's held in by a roll pin. Getting the roll pin out is no problem. I'm just going to tap it. You don't need a block for this. It's a pretty loose, reasonable pin. So you won't beat it up too much. Which is good because you don't want to actually bend your frame unit. This comes out. This just hangs free, at least in this version. And this is a good time to bring up the point that there are different versions and different revisions of this. They are all basically the same and use the same receiver components, but there are some things that have new springs, old springs, different shapes. You need to be aware that this is pretty much the modern or current version. This slides freely without a spring, and the tension of the hammer bar spring is what pulls it down. So that's that. This is an empty MUP-1. If you want to check your dimensions, these screws are fairly long, and that's a good thing, because you end up getting a lot of tension on this when you are doing a receiver, which we are not doing right now. We're doing some dimension checking and showing one repair process. So it goes in here. I told you about that tab. There's a little tab right there. It's going to go right in there. This goes on top. You're going to screw it back together. You want the screws tight, but you don't want to kill your threads or strip the heads of the screws. So, a couple inch-pounds of torque, not 50 foot-pounds of torque. Now it's in there. This piece here has a cutout for your ejector. That's how you know which side goes where. And it goes in. And it always likes to go in a little bit crooked for me. It really has to go pretty straight or it's going to jam. There it goes. So putting this in will actually help you with a frame that might be bent inward a little bit. Putting it in the jig will help you with a frame that might be bent outward a little bit. That's very good if you were drilling holes, or if you want to check the dimension of your holes, or if you want to check and see if you have a P250 frame receiver unit. You can use these as check holes. So you've got a number 39 hole here, a number 39 hole for the P250 here, which you don't normally deal with in a P320, but they use the same MUP or receiver unit. It's just that there's going to be some different parts in there. Number 22, number 32, number 40, number 9, 9mm, 7/32. And you can see visually, or you can check with a drill bit to make sure that the holes are in the right place. You can also use a press or a vise to squeeze this to help you with making sure that your rails are in the right place. Popping this out. If you have a bent receiver frame that's bent in a little bit here or here, you can use this channel, which is also used for starting the bends if you're doing a manufacturing process. And you can use this to help just spread it out a little bit. It'll help, but then you want to finish with this. That's how that works for inspection and repair purposes. Manufacturing is another thing I just can't get into right now, and there's a little bit of filing and a little bit of milling, but mostly it's a matter of drilling. Pretty cool unit. When you are checking holes, you want to check from both sides, not just one side, because if a hole is off a little bit, off this way a little bit or this way. And now we're going to reassemble our fire control group stuff into our unit here. And this is a good place for a very good deep cleaning and some greasing. And you can pretty much figure out where the wear points are. Anywhere where there's a pinhole, you're going to want to do a little bit of grease. And cleaning is up to you. Going to take the little lifter thing there, and we're going to put it back in. There, you have to clear the ejector and then press it down, get it in. You want to line up, make sure that you're lined up with the holes, because that's where you're going to put your pin, roll pin back in. And you want the ends to be pretty even when you get done. That's that. And once again, it does, you do just literally hold it. You don't want to push it against your bench or you'll start bending stuff. Your disconnector is going to go in. I find it much easier to have something to help keep my holes lined up while I start pushing the pin in. Get your pin, start pushing. You're going to push all the way through, because remember, this sits here. Once you're in with your pin, you want to take a little feeler here and just make sure that's flat. Your disconnector is flat against the edge. It's going to make it a lot easier to get this in. This is your sear. The springs on the tail go back here. Push it in. You've got, again, a hole to match, okay? And then this pin, which is going to sit flush. And this pin behaves a little more finicky for me. I've just got a really tight spot on the right hand side. This will come, the pin will sit almost flush with the MUP, and this pin sticks out more, and that's because this is going to ride on it. And this keeps this from backing out. That's your sear. This should move freely. Okay, if this does not move freely, It's because you've got something bent in there and you need to deal with it. The next step is to put your disassembly safety bar back on. Remember that there's a spring right in here. You have to get that spring hooked. First thing you do is you put this in this way, so it's diagonal again. Then you're going to get something to pull the spring back. Slide your tail in, push it down. Now you've got to retract it all the way back to get in your slot here, and that's it. That's it. That's in. That's done. Now you have this pin you're going to put back. That's this rear hole here. And literally all that does is keep this from going around. It's very simple. Very easy. Next step is to take your slide stop. Make sure your spring is right there. Set it on, flip it over, make sure everything's in place. Check your holes. You're just going to push this through. It's actually pretty easy stuff once you get going. That's there. And now the hard part, which is getting your trigger bar spring and trigger back in. It's not that hard, but it is a little bit tweaky. First thing you want to do, look at the other one. Remember that the hook comes forward. So you're going to hook in like this. Don't try to hook in like this. No good. Hook in like this. The next part is that you want to get your trigger bar spring hooked into here. You basically do that by putting the whole thing together upside down and then rotating it. Rotate it around. Okay, now you're roughly in place. Now you're going to have to do some stuff where you have to tweak and pull and twist, because you have to get these parts to go where you want them to. That hole right there matches with that hole right there. So you have to be in a position where you can put your trigger in its assembly and disassembly position and get the hole on the trigger bar to match you. Whoop, almost. Once you're there, holding this in, pull it a little bit. Now everything is set, and you should be able to slide the back tail into the groove here, and then you're ready to go. Everything is ready. So that's it. Everything is ready. That's it. That's all there is. Take down lever in. Make sure that it's facing the right direction. For disassembly or reassembly, slide on, pop it, and you're good to go. That's all there is to it. This is part 2 of the SIG 320 series. I'm not sure exactly what I'm doing next. We'll have to do a slide disassembly and reassembly, and then we'll talk more about potentials of the system. I know that someone has recently released a 320 magazine well adapter for AR-15 pistol caliber carbine platforms, and I also know that there's a couple new grip frame styles out that should be coming forward. There's one that has a built-in laser. There's the EXO one, which I really want to get my hands on. And we'll take a look at all of them. All right? Have a good one.